Bjorn Ironside is a legendary Viking who in the story surrounding him raids alongside his brothers and his father, the Viking chieftain Ragnar Lothbrok. While the legends mentioning Bjorn are set in the 9th century CE, they are most extensively known from three sources, all from around the 13th century CE, the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, the tale of Ragnar's sons and Saxo Grammaticus's Gesta Danorum. Persona Bjorn Ironside may be distantly inspired by one or multiple famous Vikings from the 9th century CE. A clear link is hard to establish. The tradition in which Bjorn occurs is legendary rather than historical in nature, and thus so must be most details of his heroic exploits and life. Bjorn in the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok. The best known and main source for the mythos of Ragnar Lothbrok and his sons is the 13th century CE Icelandic The Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, Old Norse, Ragnar's Saga Lobrokar. The work first describes the childhood of Bjorn's mother, Auslig, who is the daughter of Sigurd and Brynhild, the legendary dragonslayer and the Valkyrie from Germanic mythology, further popularized by Wagner, but loses her parents when she is 3 years old and grows up with a poor family in Norway, who name her Kraka Crow, and keep her parentage hidden. Meanwhile, Ragnar, son of King Sigurd Ring of Denmark, rids a town in Gotaland from a slight dragon problem and receives the hand of Thora, daughter of the Jarl of Gotaland, as a reward. With her, Ragnar has two sons, Bjorn's older half-brothers Erik and Agnar. Thora unfortunately dies an untimely death. When Ragnar then goes on a raiding trip along the Norwegian coast, he ends up looting something unforeseen. He meets Kraka and whisks her off, marrying her for her beauty and quick wits despite her seemingly poor heritage. The couple have 4 sons together, Ivar the Boneless, Bjorn Ironside, Hvitserk, and Rognvald, and, at a later point, after the episode in Sweden described below, Sigurd Snake in the Eye. The brothers, led by Ivar in terms of strategy and planning and by Bjorn and Hvitserk in terms of battle prowess, often go raiding and adventuring together. According to the saga, they were all great men and the boldest of warriors, and as soon as they were old enough they learned all sorts of skills. On one such raid, to Vitebo, Rognvald is cut down and dies, but the brothers are victorious nonetheless and pursue the fleeing townsmen. When they turn back to the town, Bjorn speaks a verse. Our blades bit more than theirs. Our battle cry was raised. I must tell this truly. They're on the Nipafjord. Let every man who'd like to. Lads, don't spare your swords now. Become, before Vitebo, the bane of a foeman. 8 quoted from Wagner, 14. Bjorn and his remaining brothers would continue to be the bane of their foemen elsewhere, too. Soon after the Vitebo episode, they sally forth to Sweden to successfully avenge their half-brothers Erik and Agnar, who were killed by its king, Eystein. Upon landing in Sweden, Ragnar's sons are described as ruthless and brutal, by today's standards, anyway, burning and pillaging everything and killing everyone who stood in their path. Not even King Eystein's magical cow, Sibylla, who moos so terribly the enemy force starts fighting amongst itself, is a match for them, and after concluding this affair and killing Eystein, the brothers go south. The saga describes how they are headed to Rome but only make it as far as a town called Luni, or Luna, before they hear how much further Rome still is, decide it is all too much of a drag and turn right back around. Bjorn eventually loses his father when Ragnar has grown just a tad too confident. After boasting he will invade England with just 2 ships, Ragnar is captured by King Aella of Northumbria r.c. 866 CE and meets his death in a snake pit. Ragnar's sons then avenge their father by sailing to England and allegedly torturing Aella by performing the blood eagle on him, see below. The tale of Ragnar's sons. This latter story, along with most of the main elements of the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok, is also preserved in the late 13th early 14th century CE Icelandic work, The Tale of Ragnar's Sons, Ragnarsona Adder. What the tale expands on, unsurprisingly, if one has bothered reading its title, is the actions of Bjorn and his brothers, especially after their father dies at the hand of King Aella. Ivar finds a way to build connections within England from a base in York, and with his new allies he and his brothers defeat the forces of Aella. Their wrath is not quenched until they torture Aella to death. They now had the eagle cut in Ella's back, then all his ribs severed from the backbone with a sword, in such a way that his lungs were pulled out there. 3. Luckily for the now ex-king, who has an actual historical counterpart, this method is usually thought to be fictitious and the stuff of these legends, only. After they have had their fun playing around with Aella's insides, the sons of Ragnar go raiding far and wide, from England to Normandy, other areas in what is now France, and to Lombardy. As in the saga, Luni is the farthest point they reach, with Rome here also proving too much of an effort. Their father's heritage is divided, too, and Bjorn Ironside receives Uppsala and central Sweden, and all the lands that belong to it. Along with his more recently born brother, Sigurd Snake in the Eye, and Hvitserk, Bjorn spends ample time raiding widely in France before heading back to his newly acquired kingdom. No more mention is made of him and no tale of his death is recorded, either. The Gesta Danorum, a third main source connected with the Ragnar legend and in which his son Bjorn Ironside plays a clear part as the Gesta Danorum, Deeds of the Danes. Probably written in the early 13th century CE by Saxo Grammaticus, in Latin and not Old Norse like the above two, the Gesta's ninth book contains a trove of information on Ragnar's life and deeds, including new characters and events unreported by other sources, while still trying to tie in familiar elements. Two otherwise unknown wives of Ragnar's are mentioned here, the shield maiden Lagertha and a woman named Swanlaga. The resulting mishmash of an account may be due to Saxo having tried to reconcile various stories he had heard or read elsewhere into a single account. For all its additions, the Gesta also has some clear omissions when it comes to elements usually present in the stories about Ragnar and his sons, one of which would give anyone a mild identity crisis. Auslig, who is normally depicted as Bjorn's mother, is wholly absent, and thus Bjorn switches mums to Thora, although this is only implied. A whole array of brothers are mentioned, many by different mothers than in the other stories. Sigurd Snake in the Eye, here Siward, Agnar, Ivar, and two wildcards called Radbird and Dunwa are Bjorn's full brothers, while half-brothers include Fridleif by Lagertha, Ubbi or Uba by an unnamed woman, as well as Rognvald, here Ragnald, Hvitserk and Erik by Swanlaga. To be continued.